Birds of Prey, The Ravens, issue 1. Chuck Dixon writing with Nelson De Castro on the art. So I was actually very curious. I had read this before a long time ago, but I didn't really remember what it was. So it was hard to kind of put my finger on what it was going to be again. But it's actually Cheshire and a team of like C and D list villains. I mean, maybe that's even been generous, to be honest.
Well, here's the thing. Did you know any of them?
No.
Yeah, then C list is definitely being generous.
Yes. Yeah, because we're big enough fans to know the C listers. You're right. You're right. We know the C listers. So it does the whole thing where it starts off with them in the middle of a situation and then flashes back. So, you know, there's not really much point in talking about the opening outside of, well, they're in a predicament and someone's got a bomb. It's basically that.
I think it's very much these are the counter Birds of Prey team in that this is, you know, an all-female villain squad, and this is their issue, their origin issue, I guess. Yeah,
and notably there's 4 of them versus... Well, I mean, it's only 3 now at the end, I suppose. But
yeah, and that's why I say it starts with 4, but...
Yeah, but even 3 is like more than what the Birds of Prey have right now, because I mean, and even if we have Huntress, you know, Babs is back in the, you know, back at the command center, you know, given the info.
So in the field, they're still outnumbered.
Yeah, so in the field right now, all we have is Black Canary. So
yeah,
that's worth mentioning. But yeah, so they're going to Realasia. There's like a island off the north of Realasia, or whatever.
It's always Realasia in this run.
Yeah, so far anyway. And we get this introduction of the characters. We get Vicious, who, as Cheshire puts it, is a wild card but has lethal abilities that overcome our reservations about her unpredictability. She's got sort of platinum hair and she's, you know, whatever. We then have Termina, who's the one who doesn't make it out of this because she's essentially on something of a suicide run secretly.
Yeah.
No one knows, but...
She's got a death touch power.
Yeah. Which actually is very effective. It should be very useful if they manage to convince her to stick around, but not so much. And Pistolera is a gunslinger, basically, and a sniper.
She's not Jonah Hex.
She's not Jonah Hex. That is, yes. So they're getting in because basically there's some references here to Cheshire nuking, what was it, Kurak?
Yeah.
And she wants the neutron energy device from this secret base because she wants to be able to do an even bigger explosion. So she's got nefarious plans, so it's not like we're rooting for her to succeed necessarily here. It's not that type of thing. But, you know, I will say I was surprised that this was actually a pretty solid read for what it was, because I kind of went into this expecting to be kind of like, oh, okay, it's this weird...
It felt a little formulaic, but I think I liked the chemistry of the team enough that it worked. I
think, obviously, given as the one character we know to sort of anchor it, so that, because I wonder the first time I read this if I really knew much about Cheshire, and I wonder if that made it harder to get into. Like, you know, it's just one thing. It's one thing when it's just like 4 new characters versus, well, okay, I know one of them. She's kind of my conduit. I can get behind it because of that.
I think in the writing, it is intentionally aware that you probably know Cheshire if you're reading this. That's the assumption, because all of it is through her perspective. This is her team that she's putting together. It's her opinions that matter. It's her narration boxes. And
it's worth mentioning as well, we're saying these are, you know, like D-lister, E-lister characters. There's a really good chance here that all 3 of these characters this is their first appearance. Like, that's not... I mean...
Yeah, that's completely fair.
We're joking that like they've picked the bottom of the barrel here, but this actually makes me just be new creations, and that's fine.
Could well be, and I think it's Cheshire's probably C tier at best, really.
Oh no, that's fair. That's true.
So it's already not on like we're not taking big guns on this. It's a low key team for the Birds of Prey to kind of face against.
Yeah, the issue flowed very well. I like the little sort of like fill-in teases of like sort of establishing what Cheshire's done recently, which was, you know, nuking a country, and it sort of teases these things. It also mentions her child as well, which is obviously interesting.
Yes, that's a thing that's sometimes with Roy Harper, right?
It looks like Roy, kind of.
Yeah, I think it's usually Roy.
Yeah, there's a little panel where you see sort of flashback of her, like, you know, holding the baby with him, but yeah, so there's essentially them storming this base, and like there's a bunch of action sequences. The action is pretty solid. The art
it's
feels
not the best.
Yeah, it's not the best, but it flows relatively well. It's a quick enough read. The art feels very much like it's trying to keep in style with what the art in the main book is, and I think it succeeds at that. It feels like it belongs in the same family.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if this came out like before the main series started, or if it was just kind of alongside those first few issues. I don't know if this, we're reading it here, but I don't know if this is exactly where it was originally published.
I think it came earlier. I think the reason why it's here on the trade is because the next issue of the main book is where they're coming back into it. So
it makes more sense to have this here than with all the other one shots. That they wanted to just get into the book at that point, I guess.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Especially since they're probably quite right. If this was at the end of the first trade and then there was 6 months to a year before the second trade came out, like, everyone would forget this issue. Let's be honest. This needed to be fresh in your mind, I think, the next one to have the relevance for it. But yeah, so we find out why Trisha's there. She wants this neutron bomb. Instead, the Death Touch one, I've forgotten all the names already. There you go, Termina. She actually wants to use this to kill the power, essentially, that's also killing her, that gives her this Death Touch. And it'll probably kill her just outright, but she's okay with that. She's willing to do that. So it becomes the rest of them fleeing as she essentially sets off this explosion. And the only time that we actually go to our usual characters is that when this explosion happens on the island, or it's building up to happen, it cuts to Babs, who's like, hey, the satellites are showing some really dodgy readings from Relasia. There's something big going on. A lot
of radiation going on. We'll have to look into it.
Yeah, so it sets up that they are going to be looking into it. So it just ends with the all three like helicoptering off the island.
I think worth noting that as much as we say Termina's kind of gone and not part of this team, it doesn't explicitly kill her.
No, it doesn't. She could still be around.
Plan is that this will kill the virus, I think she calls it, that gives her this ability, the Death Touch, but will probably kill her alongside it. But it's possible that she'll survive it because of this virus, and we could play with her coming back at some point.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that this virus is a result of experiments that this people who have this base, they're called Simon. It's this acronym which no one knows what it stands for, but this evil group called Simon, they experimented on her and her husband, and that's what gave her these powers and killed her husband. So it's very personal for her, even just before we get to why she's doing it. When I say what I mean is, even before we know that she's here to try and kill herself, it's very personal anyway, her attacking this place. So yeah, so that very well could come back up, and we could see Termina again. But I mean, honestly, it's a decent little one-shot, kind of like setting up these characters. I mean, this could have easily just been issue 4, but then again, would you be disappointed if this was issue 4 and we didn't get much of Babs and Canary?
I think so. I think if you do this in if this was in the 20s, people probably wouldn't complain. But at issue 4, they're still like, no, we want our new team. They don't want to risk sales early on in that book.
That's fair. Yeah. I thought it was okay though. I think it set up this team, and I like that there is like a female villain team to be the kind of the rivals of the Birds. Yeah,
it makes sense. I don't think they give themselves the name the Ravens in this, do they? I don't recall it.
Oh no, she talks about it a couple of times, and they're all wearing the same symbol. They've got a symbol.
Oh, they're wearing the symbol. I just didn't remember the name being mentioned, but maybe that's just me forgetting.
Yeah, she did bring it up at one point. I'm sure she did.
No, that's fair enough then. But I mean, I quite like it. This issue, it was solid.
All right, what are you giving it?
I'm gonna give it a 7. I think a little bit of the art, a bit wonky here or there that holds it back from being any higher.
Yeah, I'll agree with the 7. I agree with the art. I mean, some of the faces are a little bit here or there, but I will at least commend it though for feeling like it belongs to the same family as the main book, even if it's not exactly the same. It does feel like it belongs in the same world. So
I agree. It feels closer to the one shots, like the Gary Frank stuff that we had. It feels like it's imitating that versus, because we've got Greg Land as the series regular artist right now, and I think this is a little bit different to that. But if it came out before that, that'll be why.